stuff. I would hope that we at least all kind of get on the same page. At the end of the day today, it's like, yeah, this is kind of somewhat direction we're going to go. Maybe it starts off and a wave crashes up, and after you see like this far shot or something of a wave kind of overtaking Kratos and Gaia on the side of the mountain or something like that, you're freaking out. I was like, you're probably freaking out right now because of the cinematics. And then afterwards, guys, like, something's fucked up right now. I can't move. And then Kratos has to go out and find out what that thing is, and he runs into this one thing. It's like, what the fuck is this thing? And it's obviously connected to something else. And then he finds the other thing later on. And at the end, there's this big reveal, and it's like, blah! And this is what this whole thing was that you were fighting it the whole time. I think that's cool pacing, because there's always a question in the player's head while they're proceeding. It's like, I don't know what the fuck this thing is.
When they first approached me to work on Poseidon, they told me it's going to be the very first big boss fight. Poseidon, if you remember from God of War 2, he looks more like just like a human god form. But in this game, he jumps down from Olympus into the ocean, and then he emerges out as a big water creature. This is my first sketch I did for Poseidon after doing a bunch of research on exactly what Poseidon is, the god of the ocean, the god of horses. So I thought to incorporate this design of a creature, of him being made of water and the actual waves kind of looking like horses. And then this is another one along the same veins, having a lot of horses, so just kind of going wacky. Another sketch I did was this one where I incorporated multiple Poseidon's heads throughout the design, showing that he's in control of this water tentacle. They liked this design a lot with the multiple heads, and they also liked the very first sketch with him leading the horses. They liked this one the best, so they liked this for the overall direction. They saw this, they liked the feel of this, but they didn't like the direction of the octopus limbs because of previous bosses that we've had, like the Kraken. So this is just one of the limbs of the Poseidon creature, one of the arms. This one I incorporated the multiple faces, and then a lot of the crab legs. And then this is another one I did, and this one I wanted to kind of bring back because he's a god of horses to kind of capture some of that feel. So eventually they decided that instead of having two different arms, you're gonna just be fighting one arm. And they also liked the idea of the horse. This is the final, the very end, you're gonna be opening up his chest and revealing like this membrane, jellyfish kind of membrane, where you stab and eventually kill one of his limbs. It's later going to be revealed to you that the whole time you've been only fighting one of his limbs right here. It's going to be a really cool, big moment in the game.
Turnarounds are looking pretty nice.
Today I'm going to be having an art review. We're getting to the completion of one of the Poseidon's limbs, so I'm working on the turnarounds now.
Get the animators up here and make sure that those limbs, the front limbs, are not too long for him. Like, he'd have to raise it up so high.
To get you right below, he'd have to be, like, basically have his arms way up like this and be going down like that, and that's probably going to look a little silly. Let's have Andy finish this up. But, Andy, can you save off a version of what you have right now so Adam can go over it with Bruno? And just keep on getting me up here to look at it. Cool? Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys. So we just had the review. It went well. They liked the direction, and I think a lot of it, because before this is the view they've always seen, but they've never seen the front view. So for them to be able to see the front view and to see how the shape, the silhouette actually makes a trident shape, they really like that idea. I just have to finish this up. I'll probably finish it up today, and it'll be given to the modelers from there.
First time I heard about Poseidon creature was 6 months or so ago, and I heard we're going to have a few of these huge Titan battles. This was the initial concept that was given to us. Things have changed proportionally for it to work right on screen, but it generally has the same feel. I still have a lot of sculpting left on this guy. A lot of this is just like the first pass. So right now I have more just the overall feel of it. Here's Kratos. He's pretty small compared to this guy. So I brought him in here just so I could have an idea of how big he's going to be. So when it comes to details, how high res this character has to be. So you can see him. He's tiny. I just want you guys to go over and check it out before I start making all the rocks for his face, you know? So
yeah, I think it's good. Can we make sure that we're getting like some of this smaller detail like spread out over him as well?
Okay.
Can I see the scales on the back?
Oh, yeah.
It's just really fucking cool.
Poseidon looks to be challenging for every department because it's so complicated. When I first saw the concept, really, I kind of looked at it and was like, what the hell are you guys doing? But that's pretty much what I say every time I see one of these crazy concepts anyway. You just go to your desk and beat your head against the table and figure out how the hell you're going to pull it off.
Poseidon definitely falls into that class of one of those kind of surprises that I know is coming down the pipe. A lot of water, and that's kind of one of my worries, because making good water is hard.
We have to start off God of War 3 with a bang, and that's Poseidon. And Poseidon's going to be a water creature, so we have to make water look good on that character. I started doing some research on how we can make a character feel as if he's basically a waterfall, if there's water running down him. And I spent a couple hours, and I've put together the model that's behind me on the screen here. We basically want to try to prove the technology that we can make a model look like it has water running down it. So we don't have the Poseidon model built yet, but we have Zeus. Poseidon is Zeus's brother. They'll probably have similar type proportions. So he was a good test. This is a shader that I put together. It's pretty crazy with all these different connections. There's several different normal maps that are scrolling on top of each other. This probably took me 3 hours to set up the shader on top of an existing model. So where I want to take this now is I'm going to give it to the effects department, and I want to see like chunkier spraying water kind of coming down off of him. And then basically any area where water hits the surface, we just want to get little particle spray coming off to, just give this thing more of a volume, more water volume.
When I started on it, we had already established what Poseidon was going to look like, what the creatures that you're going to be fighting was going to look like, what Gaia was going to look like. We had the Gaia model. The Poseidon creature model was still in the process of being built. One of the quick things that's very surprising to the player, I guess, will be that right there is how big Kratos is. And that's Gaia. And this will be the initial fight combat tutorial. At that point, Gaia will change her animation, and she'll start climbing on the mountain differently to allow the player to be able to walk down her arm. And the Poseidon intro will happen. The player will continue along after that. She'll be in a different pose. He'll walk over here, he'll do just a little jump, come down here, fight some more enemies, and then he'll walk up to here, and this is where the Poseidon horse creature encounter happens. So this is the first thing the player will see when he loads up the game. We're trying to frame her hand and show that she's climbing up Mount Olympus, which is just roughed out right here. And then we also want to find a way of getting her head in the shot and having her head bob around and sway. After the player works his way down Gaia, this will be the first big encounter that he experiences. The Poseidon creature will burst out, knock Gaia's hand back. He'll have to fight it. We're concerned with the player experiencing this new creature that he has no clue as to what it is. And the first thing he's doing is fighting it in a way that he doesn't feel comfortable. This is the first Poseidon creature encounter, and this right here is the first CS move kill for it, where he snaps its jaw. And at this point, the creature pulls away through Gaia's arm. Kratos attaches to him, and then as the creature's falling, he jumps off. He'll transition onto Mount Olympus.
The Poseidon encounter is very much like you're riding the Colossus from God of War 2, and you're fighting the Hydras on top of the Colossus. It's kind of incorporating all of those elements that worked really well in the previous God of Wars, but also raising the bar because it's even more epic than could ever withstand before. This is what I was delivered, the thing you encounter within 5 minutes of starting the game. This is essentially a rough version of the model. It's a pretty good start. It's got all the features like this stretchy tail, which is pretty cool. Even has stretchy neck, which lets me do some crazy stuff with it. Since this creature is supposed to be made essentially out of water, he needs to be fluid and flexible. Then he's got this trident section back here. He uses that to maybe discharge lightning at the player or, do something very Poseidon-esque. This is the scene with Gaia and the tentacle creature and Kratos. And you may ask, where is Kratos? Well, he's in here somewhere. He's this little tiny dude right here. There's Kratos. I see him. So you can imagine trying to get the camera in here in the right place is kind of a challenging task. Plus, the floor is Gaia, and Gaia's moving around, so adds a lot of complexity just to the elements of trying to get everybody lined up. You encounter this beast multiple times, so you fight him first and you wound him and he retracts away and escapes, and then you come back and then he's on another point in Gaia. And then finally you realize that wasn't even the monster, that was just a small piece of the monster. And you get up to Gaia's head, and that's where you encounter the full force of Poseidon. This is the actual Poseidon creature. This is Gaia's head here you're standing on. This thing has 10 arms and legs, kind of, and then it's got 3 prongs on its back. It's also got well over 20 controls just in its spine. There's a lot of stuff going on.
He's busy. But that was my first initial impression, was there's a lot going on with Poseidon. The more I think about him, the more epic and grand. Why not? I mean, that's kind of like a God of War boss will be. Especially when you're dealing with pieces of him as you go through, and then when you come to the very end, being able to see the full glory of him and just realizing, wow, that's just a little piece of him here, and that's just a little piece of him here, and getting to the end and going, wow, he's huge. And that should be pretty epic, being little Kratos on Gaia, a Titan, versus Poseidon, a god, and they're both huge, and you're just this little guy in the middle of it that's really going to change or determine who's going to win that outcome.
Michael and I have been working on the Poseidon boss battle for a couple months now, and we've been working through the progression for the whole fight, working with Justin as well on the level design side. We're trying to get the whole layout so we have a bare-bones skeleton of how things progress. It goes back and forth to have an interesting pace to the beginning of the game. We're in the first encounter of the Poseidon boss fight. We've already seen the creature come out. Poseidon boss battle is definitely something we haven't done before. There is concern, but I wouldn't be happy if we weren't concerned. There's no challenge there. And what we want to do is make something that really surprises people and really gets people excited about the game. This is the initial CS move, the first CS move you do in God of War 3. Kratos is going to wrap his chains around the bottom jaw of the Poseidon creature and then eventually rip the jaw off completely.
It's better than over here, which was the initial placement.
Boot Valley.
When you're a little short, but when you're down here, it's kind of distracting.
Initially, we had encounter 2. The creature was coming directly out of the center of Gaia, and you see 2 gigantic mountains and the creature right in the middle of Boop Valley. Everybody giggles when they saw that. So
that wasn't what we were going for.
Not at this portion of the game. We're not looking for laughs. We have the creature now coming out of Gaia's neck, and Michael came up with the idea of one of the trident pieces on the back of the creature is actually piercing through her jaw and coming out of her mouth. So she really looks like she's in peril and she's getting destroyed by this creature. From the get-go, I came up with the idea of doing the first-person kill and giving a new perspective on Kratos' kill sequences, and Michael took the idea and ran with it.
When you defeat Poseidon as his horrible watery self, you corner him down here in his humanoid form, and that's when you have to kill him off.
Immediately, everybody was just like sold once they saw it in game.
Yeah. There was a lot of skeptics too, as far as people come up to me, and I'm sure Adam too, and what are you doing? And then actually seeing it in a game, then everybody comes over and it's just like, all right, it worked.
Kratos is not so good at making friends, but he's good at killing people.
This boss battle has to end with a big, big finisher. And our final kill is where we're testing out these new CS moves of first-person kills. So minigame inputs right now are in a third-person camera, and then when you succeed, you get to see the impact of Kratos' attacks and see how Poseidon feels as he's getting completely torn up. He just screams really loud and then bites his ear. It's more of a nibble than a bite.
So last time we checked him out, it was just the grayscale high-res ZBrush version, and I believe the low poly version as well. So since then, we've messed with water technology stuff, trying to make it look more like water's flowing through him. Help from like our art director Ken and other people trying to make the water look good. Generally though, water's pretty hard to do. It's just a combination of normal maps that scroll, like we take UVs and have them scroll, as well as parallax maps, which add the distortion, which makes it feel like it's a little deeper. After we do all the fights, get it designed, and seeing what you really see and what you really don't, and then we might have to adjust stuff from there, you know?
Poseidon is doing well right now. We've been working on it for I don't know how many months, but where we are right now is every part of the boss fight and every part of the level has a first pass right now. It's in, it's functioning. I could hand you a controller and you can play through it. Tuning-wise, it might be too hard. The animations might be placeholder, but it's there. And we have people internally play testing it. So there's people who around here have picked up the controller, played it, and been like, oh, wow, this sucks, or this is awesome. And then we keep tuning it and playing around with it to that.
We have meetings every week now, so we constantly see how much there is to do. And I mean, it's close as far as gameplay-wise. It's all there. But doing stuff on the Titans is proven to be very challenging. So things that would usually take 5 minutes take 2 hours. All things considered, all the crazy shit we're doing in there, we've had to make hardly any, if any, concessions, which is pretty amazing because the scope of this thing is just huge.
This is when we finally get the reveal of Poseidon in his big, giant, epic form. So you find out that these creatures you're fighting are just part of this one, basically the ocean pulled up to Mount Olympus. Oh, Poseidon's broken.
There you go. That's how you know it's in development.
In development. And the water's supposed to be moving here and all that.
He's got no arms.
He's got no arms. You know, we have to polish this. We have to make this robust and bug-free, which that's the really scary part. But it's getting there.
When we first saw Poseidon, we were visiting the studio in Santa Monica and working with Stig, and it just blew us away that the whole screen was filled with this boss. I don't think there's ever been a boss as big as this boss. We're actually right in the midst of scoring it with Mike Regan, and it's going to be huge. We're going to pull out all the stops, 20 brass players, 53 string players, massive amounts of percussion. So we're really going to try to create a kind of a cinematic unfolding experience for that whole first gigantic boss fight.
I hope that they're just blown away by just something they'd never seen before in a game, and to me, that's my ultimate goal when I'm making games, is like hopefully to make something that people haven't experienced, and that makes your game really stick out.
The moment that I really got to play through that Poseidon level at the beginning of the game, and you remember how excited I was, like really kind of like when we first got the assets together and like we could sit down and play the things. And you could see, like, with the polish and everything, how amazing it was going to be. And that's it for me right there.
You have disrespected the gods for the last time, Kratos.
The God of War 3 music production plan is pretty extensive. Today we're working at Skywalker Sound in Marin County. We're working with the San Francisco-based musicians from the San Francisco Symphony, the San Francisco Opera, who are phenomenal. We're really fortunate to be working with legendary engineer Leslie Ann Jones. Tim Davies has orchestrated everything, and he's conducting from the podium.
That's pretty sweet.
He really knows the music, and he really puts his all into interpreting what the composers are after.
Really pointed. Give me that nice pop on the end of each group. Here it is. Beautiful. Thank you.
The music originally comes in from the composer in what we call a mock-up, which is basically he's using his synthesizers and samplers and, you know, fake brass, fake choir, to assemble the composition.
And then once it's approved, it comes to me to translate that and put it on paper for the orchestra. It's damn expensive to have an orchestra sitting there, so my job is to make sure that everything's spotless on the page in their language. When dealing with an orchestra as a conductor, I think 75% of it is your rapport and how you can interact with the musicians, getting them to do what you want in a highly stressful situation, making it lighthearted enough that no one freaks out, but you got to keep it moving. Give me everything you've got on those crescendos at the end of each phrase. Here it is. They're a pack, and they need a leader, and they're all brilliant musicians, but there's something about when you put an orchestra together, they need that focal point, that one person that they follow. These are pretty nasty swells where you got the flutters and everything. Feel free, if it's going to be smoother, to hit the note and then start the flutter later. Okay, here we go. They can smell when you walk into the room if you can do it and if they're going to go with you. I've been lucky that, you know, they like me and I've been here a lot to the ranch to conduct. And, you know, it works really well and they're a great orchestra.
Originally on God of War 1, we had several composers, many of whom have remained with us through the God of War series. And the reason for this is not because one composer wouldn't necessarily be able to compose the whole score. It's because the variety that their different styles bring to the table is actually a tremendous advantage.
Why are there 5 composers on this collection?
Well, that's a question for somebody else who did the hiring, because I'm sure that any one of us would be quite happy to bump the other ones off and do it all by ourselves.
And a different alternate to that answer is... the reason being is because each one of us actually have a very strong voice in how we write and approach music. But generally speaking, we don't clash in styles, and therefore what ends up happening is a happy salad of the different styles that we all bring to the game, but essentially we actually work very well together as a team.
Sitting with Stig and sitting with the whole Sony crew who have they have this thing in their minds called God of War. It's an entire world. It goes beyond just characters. It's a whole, they know how they want everybody, they want the players to feel. I think what ties my music and your music and everybody else's music in is the fact that the great people at Sony, from Stig and down, is they know when it's wrong and they know when it's right. And even though we haven't heard each other's music, it ties together amazingly just because it's run through this filter, and the filter is God of War.
Right.
One of the great things about scoring for video games as opposed to film is that there's a tremendous amount of freedom.
I'm not constrained whatsoever by any convention at all, because I think a video game is not a film. And since we're not restrained by anything that's happening at any particular point in time, it's quite a free world to actually envision what you want to write and see it through to the end.
The music actually is not only on a par with film, but in some ways surpasses most films. There's almost a requirement, certainly an expectation, that there be experimentation and innovation in video games, that the music is somehow striving to do something new and something really fresh and powerful, which isn't always the case in film.
When it comes to raw power, I mean, this actually goes to another level than most films.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have to write music that must exist and take care of the atmosphere that you're in and add to the intensity of the battles that you're in. It's kind of carte blanche. We get to write these amazing sounding scores and have it backed by 40-plus piece string section, 20-plus piece brass sections. The sky's the limit.
We use a oversized brass section, so it's double the size of a normal standard orchestral brass section, just to give us this massive power and this huge low end. Guys that play low instruments, all they want to do is play low, and so we give them that opportunity.
You get to unleash and not hold back, because the game never holds back, never.
I talked to the orchestra and I said, if you have any moment that you have all of a sudden a feeling of lyrical beauty coming your way, ignore that completely and just go for the brutal, brutish, aggressive mentality of this score, and you'll never go wrong.
That's hugely fun. Yeah. And it's so much more fun to write bad music than to write, good music.
This is one of those games that actually lets you go all the way to the end of how big could it be, how nasty could it be. And it's great to do that. Of course, at the end of it, you just want to do a romantic comedy with some clarinets and...
That was really good.
At least as composers, we're being hired to do what we do, which is write melodic material, aggressive, edgy material that people remember. Think about when we went to go see your favorite movie as a kid, and you walk out humming the theme, and you want to buy the soundtrack because it's such a great part of the experience, and that's what we're trying to do.
Is to get people to buy the soundtrack to God of War 3. Yeah, I forgot. Good point.
We did just go down to the studio, and we saw where the game's at, and the game, as you probably have just played through to unlock this video, is amazing.